A lot of new developments out of Israel, particularly as it relates to Netanyahu's claims that war with Iran may be in the offing and that the Trump administration is okay with it. This started last week with a quiet piece in the Washington Post. Israel likely to strike Iran in coming months, warns U.S. intelligence. And so think about the structure there. U.S., it's key that this is in the Washington Post. This is Washington, D.C.'s newspaper. U.S. intelligence officials leaked to that paper that they're concerned that Israel is going to strike Iran. There was a previous assessment under the outgoing Biden administration that there was a very high likelihood that Israel would strike Iran within the first 6 months of 2025. At the time, the Biden administration weighed whether or not it would kind of publicly endorse a move like that and decided not to. Israel now, Netanyahu now saying that he really has Trump's buy-in for this attack. Trump himself gave an interview with Fox News recently where he said this, something very similar to what Witkoff said, and we'll roll Witkoff in a second. Trump said, we will not allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon, and there's two ways to stop that. One is we blow up their nuclear facilities. Two is that we get a deal. And he says, he would much rather get a deal than launch a war. That's what you're hearing from Trump, but he's not ruling out that he would support an Israeli strike. If we can, here's Steve Witkoff recently in an interview talking about the role that Iran is playing in these ongoing Israeli negotiations. It's role C3.
Iran is the benefactor, but of course, the largest issue is the nuclear. And the president has said they will not get a bomb. Them getting a bomb is devastating to the region. It will force every other country in that region to get a bomb too. We'll have a nuclear arms race, and that simply can't happen. But the president has also said this can be solved diplomatically. And if Iran shows an interest in solving it diplomatically, the American government remains open to those discussions. And so I hope that it can be solved diplomatically, because the alternative is not such a good alternative.
And so we've talked about this before, that all of this is happening in the context of the Israel-Gaza war. And if the Israeli assault on Gaza were the only thing, were a kind of isolated geopolitical contest, then Trump's support for Netanyahu's ability to just wipe it off the map, I think would be unchecked.
I totally agree.
But it's happening in the context of this more regional consideration where Trump very much wants a Saudi-Israeli peace deal, normalization between the two. He also wants an Iran nuclear deal. Mm-hmm. I think he sees this as, a potential legacy item. It's deeply ironic, of course, because Obama struck one and then Trump immediately ripped it up. But now he believes that he can be, recognized as this great deal maker if he can get back into the deal that he ripped up. And so it is the one thing that is giving the ceasefire oxygen and giving it legs, keeping it alive. You can put up C4 here. This is from DropSite's Twitter feed. So Israel struck and killed two police officers in Gaza who were guarding an aid convoy. Hamas has said that Israel's continuing to attack and kill people inside Gaza. Puts the ceasefire in jeopardy. They said the attack on Palestinian police officers guarding aid trucks in southern Gaza, quote, clear violation of the ceasefire. Trump, quote, and then says that Trump should not believe that it's going to be easy to go along with Netanyahu's idea here, and Trump's idea that they're just going to clear everybody out. This is, quote, Trump, quote, has no clue about the resistance of the Palestinians. He has no clue about how the Palestinians are connected to their homeland. It's not real estate. It's a homeland. He argued that every time Israeli officials have spoken about the, quote, elimination of Hamas, the group has only grown stronger. And I do think it is accurate to say that every time Trump says that when he wants all of the Palestinians out and he's not going to let them back, his position gets weaker. Like you say that out loud, you're not going to win people over that way. And so that is what Trump is saying. But what Trump is actually doing is the status quo. On Saturday, you had the hostage exchange go off as planned. So you had all of this talk about war with Iran, Trump and Netanyahu demanding that every single hostage needed to be out by Saturday, or else they were going to all hell will break loose again.
Happened. Yeah, at least.
And instead, Witkoff gets back in there and he's like, "No, like we've got a deal. We're going to continue with this deal." And so the deal goes off. So the latest news is that Netanyahu, he spoke last night at this major pro-Israel conference. He has authorized, finally, his negotiators to go back to Cairo and continue with the negotiations toward phase 2. And phase 2 is the part that Witkoff is trying to make sure is completed, because that is the part where all of the remaining hostages are exchanged, and reconstruction is then supposed to begin, and it's supposed to be a permanent ceasefire. Yeah. The question of what role Hamas plays is the one that's being negotiated. Hamas is sending a lot of signals that they're willing to just step back, that they're willing to demilitarize, that a technical, a bunch of technocrats, either affiliated with the Palestinian Authority or not, but under the auspices of the guarantee of the U.S., Egypt, UAE, others, could actually be the ones to play a role in the reconstruction. That they understand that may be the thing that has to happen. It is telling that it is the Israelis who are the obstacle to this situation, because once they make that concession, what's the argument from Israel that you can't allow this? Like they've said, like
war, right.
Surrender and give us the hostages and it's over, and that's effectively what they would be saying.
So what do you make then of this reversion back to phase 2? Because first the deal was off. Now the deal is back on. Why? For what purpose? Is it some grand deal with Iran? Because that Washington Post report is very troubling, right? Is that basically the Biden people at the end, of course, by the way, they leak it at the end. They're like, by the way, while we were in office, we discovered they wanted to attack Iran. I'm like, well, maybe you should have done something about it. But that would be asking too much, unfortunately.
One possibility is that, so think about it this way. If Trump really does want a permanent ceasefire, Saudi-Israeli normalization, and an Iran nuclear deal, that costs a lot of capital with the Miriam Adelson kind of wing of his financing. So if he really does want that, what does he have to do? He has to build up capital first. And how do you build up capital?
Green light.
By being a complete lunatic in, hey, you want to ethnically cleanse all of Gaza? Go for it.
I'll do it for you.
I'll do it for you. Yeah. And you see this too with North Korea. He'll talk about wiping them off the face of the earth,
right?
And then he'll come in and do the thing he wants to do, which is some type of a.
So you're buying the madman theory.
So I think if you do buy that he wants a deal here, it is rational that he would at this point be acting like a madman. So that when Netanyahu later gets screwed, Trump can say, "Look, I did everything I could. I was even willing to do full-on ethnic cleansing for you, but it's just not feasible. So we have to get serious about this." And Egypt is saying that they've got a plan where it's a 3 to 5 year reconstruction. It does not involve Hamas anymore, and the government
pay for it.
UAE and Saudi will pay for it. And look, I would love to ethnically cleanse the Palestinians even more than you would. But Bibi, it's just not feasible. It's not doable. And I'm not sending American troops. And when you send Israeli troops, all they do is do TikToks and get themselves killed, and lead to ICC indictments and ICJ allegations of genocide, and the complete, just embarrassing yourself and further isolating yourself on the world stage. So look, can't do that. We're going to have to do a deal. Like
it.
A best case scenario, perhaps.
Right. What's the mid case scenario? Because what if
mid-case
it's all
scenario
just
is- yeah.
torn? It's all just. What I can't get my head around is why, because as you just said, and look, if Obama had ever say all hell will break loose and then didn't attack Hamas after they
The red
leave,
line.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine what the Tom Cottons and all of them of the world would look like? I've always seen Trump as somebody who talks big but never actually wants to follow through. I mean,
Right.
occasionally, you can point to a few things, the Qasem Soleimani killing, for example. But there were a lot of, actually, I was supposed to interview Trump the day, you remember that American spy plane that got shot down? It was unmanned. It was it was a Navy plane that was
remember
shot
that.
down.
Right around
and
then?
2018. And I was supposed to interview him that day, got canceled. And apparently what came out is that Trump had ordered a retaliatory strike that John Bolton had been pushing. But then at the last minute, he was like, hey, you know what? We
yes.
shouldn't kill any of these Iranians. They didn't kill any of our people. Let's not kill any of theirs. Bolton and all of them were furious. He seems to have like a duality inside of him.
Oh, yeah.
Where it's like on the one hand, says we're going to own Gaza.
Right.
We're going to ethnically cleanse it ourselves. I'll do it for you. And then on the other hand, he's like, maybe we should sit with Russia and China and we'll all just cut all of our military spending.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait, what? It's like, well, which one of these is true? What's going on here? So, yeah, I don't know. I'm worried about the Israel thing only because it does seem that Israel has played him very well. Not only do they have the Miriam Adelson connection, they have effectively, while yes, Trump has pushed them around, Witkoff and others, it does obviously accept the framing on Iran. You and I know institutionally, nothing would make more political sense in Washington terms than to support an Israeli strike on Iran. That's where the majority of the GOP is. Now, there are important characters in the Trump universe, JD, I would hope, being one of them, but also many of the people who Trump has appointed to the Pentagon oppose the very type
Strongly.
of strike, very strongly oppose.
Yeah.
And so maybe they will win out. Are they even in the room? We don't know. And so that's what I think that the big war behind the scenes is. But look, at the very least, I'm just happy. Let phase 2 go 3. Let people stop getting killed.
The risk in Trump's madman strategy, of course, is that Netanyahu won't recognize it for just the madness that it is and think it's real. In Netanyahu's speech last night to this pro-Israel conference, he said, Trump's idea for Gaza has opened up possibilities for us that we never even dreamed were possible, and we are going to pursue that with everything we have.
Yes.
So he thinks he's taking Trump seriously and literally, and he's going to try to take this moment to effectuate what Trump put out as a possibility. The question is, can Witkoff reel him in enough, and how much agency does Netanyahu actually have? And we don't know. Meanwhile, let's talk about a little bit of the reporting that's been coming out lately. 972, an Israeli investigative news outlet, we actually partnered with them on a story about a month ago. Reminder that that a lot of their stuff has to go through a censor. So the stuff that comes out has been already, the IDF says yes. But so consider that when you when you think about the pieces that have been coming out of there. When you put up C5, this is an investigation by Yuval Abraham in 972, which exposed one of the more horrifying, like cinematic horror film anecdotes. The IDF came across a couple in their 80s who told the Israeli soldiers that because of their disabilities, the man walks with a cane, that they were unable to evacuate the area with their family, and so they're still in northern Gaza. And this is according to 972, and like I said, went through the censor. They strap explosives around this couple and use them as human shields. They call them mosquitoes, is one of the terms for them. Use them as human shields going through the neighborhood while they're clearing it of Hamas fighters, and then at the end execute them. Just levels of criminality on display that are almost unimaginable. And this comes after 972 very recently reported that the IDF had discovered that when it dropped these bunker buster bombs, that as a consequence of the explosion, it released an enormous amount of carbon monoxide and basically burning up all of the oxygen in these tunnels. And so they understood that this was a conventional bomb that operated as a chemical weapon, and that if they knew or if they guessed that somebody that they were trying to kill was in a tunnel, but they didn't know within 500 meters or more where they were, they could drop some of these bunker busters and it would asphyxiate, it would suffocate everyone in the tunnel. What 972 also reported is that there were essentially no precautions taken to make sure that there were no hostages in the area. And they know for a fact now that as a result of that, a significant number of Israeli hostages were suffocated through this bomb and asphyxiate strategy. Eventually, they started requiring commanders to take some assessment of whether or not they were going to kill hostages. And so the killing of hostages has apparently diminished recently.
Horrific.
But absolutely horrifying stuff coming out of 972. Any thoughts on any of this before we move to the next one?
I just don't even know what to say. It's just horrible. I mean, it makes sense, and it fits with the testimony of a lot of the surviving hostages about the conditions that they were
their
filmed.
number one fear was
And that they were going to be
the
killed.
constant bombing.
They could remember. They said I could hear the bombs falling above me. It's horrifying.
Constantly. And then two other things to talk about before we move on. Curious for your take on this. I think it's within the realm of possibility.
If he pulls off phase 2, then yes.
Fascinating.
But there's a lot to be said.
Fascinating political piece here. Trump privately calls Steve Witkoff, quote, a modern-day Kissinger. And if there's going to be an American diplomat who shakes up American foreign policy and actually gets something accomplished, it would stand to reason that it would be somebody that comes from out of the fold. And I think I've seen you talking about this. In some ways, international real estate is as
the perfect realm.
good a training ground.
Yes.
It's almost as good as when Trump made Exxon's CEO.
Rex Tillerson,
the Secretary of State.
Although he was a terrible Secretary.
It turned out to be terrible, but you
Right.
would think that being the CEO of Exxon would actually be an American diplomat.
I'll tell you that I'm very pro Witkoff.
Yeah.
Witkoff has all of the ingredients that you need for a great international diplomat. International finance, worked in Vegas, used to putting together like complex deals. Most importantly, has the total trust of the president because apparently they've been friends for like 20 or 30 years or whatever, or 40 years. 40-year friendship. So actual ironclad trust there. Proven track record now. He yelled at Bibi, got him to do at least phase 1. There are a lot of hostages who owe their lives to Steve Witkoff. Whatever else happens, there are 30, 40 people, and who knows how many Palestinians. You literally owe your life to Steve Witkoff. Witkoff got that guy Mark Fogel released, that Russian, or the guy who was being held by Russia. He is today in Saudi Arabia with Secretary Rubio, meeting with the Russian foreign minister to specifically negotiate. Apparently, he and Putin had a long discussion about Ukraine whenever Witkoff was in Russia to secure the release of Mark Fogel. So if he gets phase 2, and or if he is successful in negotiating a Ukraine peace deal, then he's absolutely the next messenger.
Give it to him. We won't talk. We're not going to go into what we mean.
We don't need
Kissinger.
Ryan's Cambodian.
We're not going to go into Kissinger for now.
Right.
Let's just set that aside. Last piece. Our buddy Mike Gallagher, former congressman.
That's right.
Was lead sponsor of the TikTok bill in the House. Now an executive over at Palantir because this is Washington D.C. That's how that goes. Became the latest person involved in the effort to ban TikTok, which is now back in the App Store, to say out loud how it was that it got over the hump. We'll play this clip in a second. What we don't mention here, Mark Warner, who was on the Senate side, the guy.
He already said this.
The IC guy. Right. And he's on the stage too.
Right.
And he says, I want to hear whether Mike tells the real story, the true story of how this happened. And Gallagher did tell the true story. Let's roll this.
A bipartisan consensus. We had the executive branch, but the bill was still dead until October 7th. And people started to see a bunch of anti-Semitic content on the platform, and our bill had legs again.
And so producer Mac made it a great point when he was watching this too. because you can sort of see Gallagher trying to clean it up, where he's like, after October 7th, that's when it got its momentum. He's like, oh, that's not going to sound exactly right. So then he shoehorns in, because there was a whole lot of anti-Semitic content on TikTok. There was not a whole lot of anti-Semitic content on TikTok. What there were a lot of videos from Palestinians in Gaza of them getting killed, maimed, and their neighborhoods getting destroyed. And so it allowed the American public to connect directly in a parasocial way with real human beings on the ground and bypass the cable news, New York Times version of what was happening. He retcons that to anti-Semitism, but Mac's funny point, not funny, wait a minute, anti-Semitism on a social media platform is a reason to ban it? Have you ever logged on to X?
X.com?
I
actually refuse to call it X.com.
Have you ever logged on to Twitter lately? It is, Kanye is like the moderate one on Twitter right now. It is an absolute cesspool of unadulterated, straight up anti-Semitism.
Well, I don't support banning anything for quote unquote anti-Semitism.
Right. But if we did, it would not be TikTok alone that would get rolled up in it. But, just another, Romney has said this before, Warner, Blinken. So there's no mystery about what it was that gave the final push. Yes, the national security establishment wanted to ban it before that, but they couldn't get the...
Listen, I was pro-banning TikTok since 2018. Even I'll say that's why it happened. Now, sometimes you do good things for the wrong reasons, but it's okay.
Yeah.
And by the way, Trump, I don't even know why you guys are complaining anymore. You won.
I know.
Right? Yeah, it's just like,
back,
stop. We're the ones who sit here lost, right?
I know, why are these... That was what was funny. They're on that stage celebrating as if they won.
Right. It's like,
how
we lost.
How did we win this victory?
Yeah.
It's like...
Trump just came in and was like, actually, no, we're not doing this at all. Like,
it'd be like if the refs came in at the very end and were like, okay, actually the Chiefs won.
Yeah. That's right. It was at one point that much of a blowout in the TikTok victory, but I knew, in my heart, I always knew Trump would. I gave up. When Trump started talking about TikTok on the campaign trail, I'm like, it's game over.
The young people love me on TikTok.
No, it's not just the whole young people thing. IRL, what it is Jeff Yass, his huge donor, who's a huge stake, whispering in his ear in Mar-a-Lago for the last 4 years, on top of Trump. Maybe this fits with the Elon thing. At the end of the day, he respects only one thing, commodity of attention. That's it. There's nothing else that he respects more in the world. Hence, he's like, okay, I'm pro TikTok, so there we go. Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show, ad-free, and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.